Yes. All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Abel Mitsuri. I am the project manager responsible for overseeing and managing the Language Access Project with United Way of Southern Nevada. I would ask all of you to go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat, basic info, your name, your title, and the organization you work with. I would like to acknowledge that this workshop was brought to you by United Way of Southern Nevada and made possible by the Language Access Project. Also, I would like you to share this workshop with your colleagues, people you work with, your friends. This is open for everyone. And anyone can join in and take advantage of these workshops. Later on, I'm going to go ahead and share two links in the chat box. One is going to be for our YouTube channel where you can access the previous workshops. And the other one is going to be for the free translation, interpretation, and phone line services that we provide through our funds for language access. So if you're a nonprofit or government agencies, you can take advantage of these services using our website. Also, for future workshops, if you need an ASL interpreter, if you need closed captions, we added that into our registration, so you can request an ASL interpreter and we can make that happen for you. That is it for me. I'll go ahead and hand it over to David, where he can introduce himself and start with the presentation. Go ahead, David. Thank you.
Thank you, Abel. Hello, everyone. So welcome to today's presentation, Data with Purpose, Optimizing Collection for LEP Clients. So just to tell you a little bit about myself, for those that don't know me, my name is David Loaiza-Funk, and I'm the founder and CEO of Diversidad LLC, a consulting firm dedicated to eliminating language barriers and fostering inclusion within the community of Southern Nevada, with a master's degree in healthcare administration, dual certification in medical healthcare interpretation, and I'm also serve as a faculty member at UNLV, teaching Spanish medical interpretation, and I've held multiple leadership positions with organizations that are for-profit and non-for-profit, that has given me all this knowledge that I want to share with you guys when it comes to language barriers and how to improve communication when you're encountering multicultural clients. And we know that data is really important. It's like the lifeblood of any successful organization, because we can use the data to inform us, to give us some information about strategies, to measure our impact, and also guide us through decision making. However, when it comes to serving limited English proficient communities, collecting accurate and comprehensive data can present unique challenges. So in this presentation, what I want to do is explore the limited English proficient landscape, understand the barriers that we usually encounter when collecting data, and try to give you some practical strategies to overcome these challenges, and also discuss the importance of measuring success and continuing improving your data collection and your strategies to move forward. So we hear a lot the letters LEP, the limited English proficient, is usually what we use for LEP. And these are individuals who have difficulty speaking, reading, writing, or understanding English. They may be immigrants, refugees, or long-term residents in our community who primarily speak a language other than English. There's been some statistics that we usually provide, and we can have those links available to you guys too, so you can see our statistics as an overall community. Because when we usually look at data, and we want to know like, okay, let me see the statistics on the language, we usually go with whatever the census provide us. And usually that give us some good image of the type of community that we have. And knowing that Nevada is a minority majority community or state, then we have to like break it down to what that really means. And we know that the Spanish population or the Latino Hispanics is it's one of the bigger ones. But then we also have to find out what other type of communities we have out there. So to do that, we need to find relevant data. And some of the challenges that we usually encounter collecting data are how we usually make our surveys or our data collection. The forms may not be available in the preferred language that whoever is filling it out might just not fill it out because they just don't understand the right questions, or they might struggle to understand some of the terminology that some of the questions may have. So it's kind of like, oh my God, I'm getting another survey, pass. Cultural differences also play into this type of scenario. Questions or responses that we usually get that are culturally relevant may lead to confusion or inaccurate responses. Also, there might be some distrust, like where is this information going to go to? Some LEP communities may have historical or personal experiences that make them hesitant to share the information with organizations. And I don't blame it. I usually get a new phone. Well, I get a new phone for a family member because I have the same phone number since I was out of high school, pretty much. And I do get a lot of spam calls because it's the same phone number. But with my kids, I'm like very particular. Like, never fill out a form and put your own number. Just put my number because I don't want them to have that information sold to their organizations, and then they start getting the phone calls that we all get as spam. So there might be some distrust there. Also, keep in mind literacy levels. The materials, even if they're translated, I'll keep in mind the way that you're writing them in English, because a lot of the times, as a translation company, we do get some information that is for the community, and the message itself, whoever wrote it, they just like came up with it and put everything down, and it makes sense in English. It makes sense for somebody that is educated, but there might be some sort of like registry. So whatever the company is handling the information, if it's at a, I don't know, fourth grade levels, then make sure that it kind of goes with that, because the translations are usually precise and they match the original. So if the actual original has very wording that is difficult to understand, then that's going to cause some issues as well into the other languages, especially when using jargon that is not common. So make sure that it's used standard, don't use any phrases or any type of slangs, because that might be translated differently. Now, some strategies to optimize data collection.
David, 1 second, please. I think, so in the screen, I'm not sure if you're seeing it on yours. Oh, there we go. Yeah.
Oh, I just
Let's
have
see.
yeah, it's probably blocked because I had the cameras on. So that kind of blocks part of the screen. So I could see some of your faces. I just lowered it. So when we talk about data or optimizing competent data collection tools, we usually talk about surveys. Make sure that if you're using a survey, they're very well, look at your demographics or the type of clients that you usually get and make sure that they're translated into those languages. And also, like I say, use plain language, avoid jargon, incorporate visual aids. Previous workshop, we talked about the use of icons. I mean, as you guys can see here, a bunch of pictograms or icons. They represent not only the like the type of different data that you can collect, diagrams that you can create with the data, but also the image gives you a better what they're something that they're talking about. So bar chart, just think about it. If you translate that, you might get it right, but the word bar may not be this type of bars. It could be a bar where you go out drinking. So just having this type of imaging, it just creates a better response for multicultural audiences. So consider cultural nuances, include questions and responses, options that are culturally relevant, taking into account the specific values, beliefs, and experiences of the LEP community you serve. To give you an example, is instead of asking general questions about family, you might ask about extended family or immediate family to make a difference, what type of family you're actually referring to, recognizing the difference, the different cultural interpretations of these terms also helps. And additionally, being mindful of sensitive topics or cultural taboos that may be relevant to your LEP population. For example, in some cultures, it might be considered inappropriate to ask directly about income, marital status. If you're in healthcare, talking about the C word, cancer is taboo. Let's not talk about it. There are some cultures that when you talk about the illness, it's kind of like putting more bad energy into it, and like it's not gonna be a cure or not something to help, but rather than if I'm aware that I'm sick, I might just get worse. So just having the cultural aspects for obviously talking about the medical community, there is a certain or there's specific rules that they have to follow. They have to inform the patient about everything. So make sure that you partner up with somebody that is cultural, could serve as a cultural broker in the case of somebody that is bilingual from that place that they come from, could be an employee. Or if you have an interpreter, they usually serve as the cultural broker. So they might do like pauses on how to communicate better. So training, training and training and capacity building. When you collect data, make sure that, like I said, it's not only cultural competent data, but it also makes sense when you're displaying it. So invest in your staff to ensure that they're equipped with the effective way to serve or communicate with the provider. A lot of the times when I've gone to some place, clinics usually come to mind because that's where you have to give your information, your insurance. But if your organization is, when filling out this type of forms, has the budget and is modernized in a way that you have a tablet for the person to fill out those boxes where they're putting themselves into. What I mean is male, sex, race, and the different options. It's really funny when a Latino usually comes in and it's like, what's your race? So, and it's really challenging too, because if you are from Latin America, if you're from South America or Central America, there's also races. There is white and black. So even though you're Hispanic, you are white. So that's why there is a lot of specific information when you have those tablets or those forms of putting yourself in a box. It says race, white, black, native, other. And then there is another one that it says ethnicity, Hispanic or Latino, and Asian, and then it goes into the different other options. If it's kind of like sometimes when filling that out, it's kind of interesting because it's like, well, you're using a Spanish interpreter, I'm Latino, like, why are you asking me this question? So let's just think about as an organization how to display those questions. If the person gets to fill it out themselves, obviously you're not looking at the person, so they easily can fill it out themselves. Make sure that it's in the language. If when it comes to data collection, the language of preference, there's some organizations that still make the mistake of putting primary language. The word primary language, it's makes sense in English. It's kind of like the language that you want to communicate with. But it's better to change it to preferred language, because even if I'm bilingual, if you ask me what my primary language is, I'm going to think of what's my mom's language or what's the language that I spoke the first years of my life, because that was my primary. Then I learned English, that's my secondary. But I went to college here in the United States, so I'm going to say my English is going to be stronger, more, have better vocabulary in because it's at a college level. So for this type of scenario, I should be marking myself English because that will be the preferred language of communication. I know that a lot of providers will speak English. So that's why the preferred term should be put down in the form rather than the primary. I can tell you so many encounters that I've had where they requested an interpreter, and I, as an interpreter, I have gone down there or I have sent somebody to help the client, and it's like, I speak English. Like, why do we have an interpreter here? Like, can you just here I can communicate just clear? And the reason that the interpreter was called is because primary language was a language other than English. So they called the interpreter, and then there was this little uncomfortable interaction. So using the preferred language, even if I'm bilingual or the person is bilingual and can communicate just fine, if it's something very delicate, end of life, or something that has to do with legal aspects, like the person that might be able to get a benefit because they misunderstood something, they might want their preferred language, whichever has better college education or better jargon in their mind. And so that's why we need to use that word preferred language. And when we talk about community engagement, organizations that usually serve multiple cultures, yeah, let's call them cultures, people that come from different countries, whether they're refugees or it could be our own residents or tourists. The partnership that we can provide with some sort of group, it's quite nice to have United Way doing this type of projects, because now we have a bunch of organizations that they specialize in different cultures. And so if you guys need some questioning, I think by addressing myself or Abel, we can actually direct you to the right group to learn more about a specific culture. But also whether you engage with community or your own employees, it's good to have this groups, brainstorming groups or settings where you can actually get more data, some more information on how to serve better your community. So I would say first, have your staff meetings and dedicate a few minutes to talk about the encounters with language barriers and in other cultures. That type of data is more qualitative. It's just information that you're going to get. Obviously, it's not something that you can create a graph out of it. But it's very important because the frontline staff, those that are actually dealing or making the phone calls and having those challenges communicating with the limited English proficient clients, are the ones that are going to give you some information on the interaction and more valuable information. So we have those. We also have the community, creating a way to engage the community. It's one of the greatest ways to also collect data. If we talk about how to reach out the community or somebody that wants our services, and we don't know what kind of language they speak, we do have those forms that we can set up in our own websites where they can fill out the form to be a new client, and then they have the option to select language of preference. However, a lot of the websites, it is recommended to have multiple languages if you're serving a multicultural community. And to talk about just to give you a little overview or idea, there are some translation websites that actually are very common, that are plugins that you can install in your own website. So some of the popular ones are WPML, Weglot, and this WordPress Translate Press or Google Translate Press. They all connect nicely to your website. And yeah, let me just give you a little example here. You guys see what I see, right? This website?
No, we can't see the
No?
screen.
Okay.
Oh,
Do you see a website now? No.
no.
Okay, let me stop sharing and okay. You see this website now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So Nevada PEP, non-for-profit, local non-for-profit, they have worked with them in the past. Here, if you go to their website, you would see all the information that you need to see, right? But if I speak a different language, they have a plugin that has been attached to their menu. And actually, they displayed it over here. This you could display it anywhere you'd like. You can put it lower at the bottom, kind of like this accessibility. As you move, it will stay there. This one, as you move the page, is always on the upper right corner. When you click on it, it's got all these flags where you can select the language. Now, it's pretty neat, I must say, especially if you know the flags. I can see here is the United States, so if I click on this one, it will stay in English. But if I speak Spanish, I grew up in Venezuela, Colombia. I know my colors for those flags are yellow, blue, red, and if I look over here, I won't see it. So we have multiple countries that speak Spanish, and here I found one, which is Mexico. Mexico is one of our biggest communities, so it does make sense to put in Mexico. So if we click on it, we get everything translated. Pep Talks es un podcast que analiza temas. So everything gets translated into Spanish. By a quick review here, since I'm very proficient in Spanish, I can see that a lot of these words are nicely translated. For some reason, these tabs were not translated. And I can go to another language, it will do the same thing to the other language. So this is nice, a nice feature that you can install in your website. However, there's always issues with computer translation because this is a computer translation, automated translation. And that's why we always prefer to have a person translate things or at least revise them. So I already gave my feedback to Nevada Pep, and they kept it like this for this presentation, but they will actually fix it. Couple of things that I recommend to a website like this would be the plugin features. You can actually drag and drop. So you can rearrange right now, they are alphabetically based on language. So you kind of, if you're looking for Spanish, you kind of have to like go down, or Chinese, the C is one of the first ones. Here it is, and it gets translated. So if you know your big community, the communities that you deal with the most, my recommendation would be to drag and drop those flags and put them in the list that they're highly used. So I would put Spanish as first, and then I will go with Chinese, then Arabic, and so on. Then it will be easier for somebody to just find them. And that's one recommendation. The other recommendation is one that the plugins usually have a way um, to add manual translation. So it doesn't have to be all computer. So you can actually go in and check everything. For example, this word right here, let's go back to English, get involved. You could change it to something that would be more accurate in most languages, like, because get involved is more of an expression of like, come get involved with us. What it really means is come and participate, right? Participate will actually be better translated than get involved. If we go to Spanish, because I don't read the other languages, so I cannot show you other languages. But if we go into Spanish, it says complicarse. That means get complicated, get worse, pretty much. So it doesn't really go with get involved. So that will have to be changed manually to actually make sense. And but everything else is a good plugin. Usually plugins do have a charge. Now I'm not affiliated with any of these companies, so it's not like I'm promoting them, but it would be a good start to actually use the plugin and if you're paying for it, you will have some sort of data collection, meaning the more clicks that you get in a specific language, you will actually know what kind of languages your community needs, what they're using. Sorry, I'm trying to look for the page where we were. Okay. So if so when you have the clicks on the actual page or the language to translate the web page, that will give you data. If you're paying for this type of plugin to have more accurate or to yeah, I think the options to pay there a lot of them are free, but the options to pay give you more information, more data. Or you can add another plugin for data, like Google Analysis plugin or some of the other analysis plugins that will give you the data of the website usage and the clicks on the languages. That way you get more information. Let's see, let's talk about more about quality of the data. So when we talk about quality of the data in your website, you can install different things. So we talked about changing the website to a specific language. If I look at the analysis, that will give me something similar to what we get on the screen. If I put it into a graphic, However, these actually translation metrics are from United Way, and these are metrics based on translation requests. And, so I'm going to pass it to Abel so he can give us a little overview of what this means.
Perfect. Thank you, David. So yeah, as I mentioned earlier, we do offer free document translation, over the phone interpretation, and ASL interpretation for video remote meetings. This one you see here specifically is for document translation. So each time we receive a document that is requested for translation through our website, we process it, we can go on the back end and see all the data that there is. So if you take a look in the middle, orders by language combination, you're going to see that the most popular one is English to Spanish, English to Amharic, Tagalog, and so on. On the side for the word translated, we get a number of how many words were translated by each month. And on the key metrics, we see more details of on-time delivery. Was it delivered on time? Because again, when we put in a deadline for the translation, we are not sure that we're going to get it on the same day. It's the company that is doing the translation will have the specific individual doing the translated kind of evaluating how much time it's going to take. We also can see the order numbers and also the total that has been spent in the last 7 months since we opened it to the public. So it gives us a good idea of what languages are popular, how many words are we translating, the traffic on our website. And later on in the presentation, we're going to discuss why is this so important. Moving on to the next slide. So this is for document translation. This is for our over-the-phone interpretation. Same thing. We're going to see the minute by the language. Again, Spanish is the most popular. ASL interpretation. This is for video remote interpretation. We're also going to see the satisfaction rate. People get to rate how the interpreter was over the phone at the end of each call, the number of calls made, the number of minutes, and then also even more details if you want, like connection speed. How long did it take you for you to connect with an interpreter, and a breakdown of which month we received the most over the phone interpretation requests. Now, I know if you can move to the next slide, David, please. The reason why we collect data is because it is so important for us to show the need in our community. So in order for us, when it comes to any urban issue, language access is one of them, and we want to advocate for that specific issue, we need funding for that. We need funding to keep this work going. In order for us to get the funding, we have to show the need in our community. And the way we show the need in our community is by collecting data. Yes, there's always access to data that is published by many organizations, specifically government organizations like organizations that do census. But this gives you a good look at what's actually going on in the community. I'm going to give you an example. For instance, when you talk about certain communities, you might hear, oh, this specific ethnicity has a higher percentage of individuals within this specific community more than another ethnicity. Now, when you're in person in that community, you might say, well, no, I see this ethnicity more than the other, but the data says otherwise. There's the data that you get, and there's also the data that you can collect live from real life situation. And this is why this data can come in very handy, because we can see the languages that we actually get the most requests for. Another example would be when you look at the document translation, number one is Spanish, which is what we have in the census data. Now, number two is Amharic. If we look at the census data we have, number two is usually either Tagalog or Mandarin. But when you look here in the document translation, you're going to see it's Amharic. But again, the more data you have, the better it is. And that's why we want to collect as much data as possible when it comes to the languages that we are translating to, the languages that we need to be serving in our community. Obviously, the long-term goal is to cover all the languages there is, but as of now, as all of you know, language access is something that is new to our community. So that is why in our project, we're covering the 9 languages that fall after English, and we are planning on covering more and more and using the data we have to request for more funds and keep this work going. I'll hand it back over to David.
Now, keep in mind also, just to add a little bit of what Abel told us, a lot of the times that we collect data, there are things that might skew the numbers, might show us something different. In this case, we have, even though we have Spanish at the beginning, we have Tagalog number 3, Chinese goes down to number 5, and other languages that we don't usually see in the data just start popping up. When I was in healthcare in the hospital, and I think I mentioned this in the past, in the hospital setting, Spanish would be number 1. Number 2 would be Chinese, Mandarin, Cantonese. And then the number 3 would be Vietnamese. Then we will get some of the other languages that are here, Korean, Thai. However, Tagalog didn't make it to the list. And Tagalog was one of the most spoken ones. The reason that it didn't make it to the list is because we do have a high percentage of nurses that speak Tagalog in the community, and providers that speak some of the other languages too, like doctors that speak Arabic and Hindi. So some of those languages like didn't make it to our data collection. Some of those languages didn't make it to the data collection. So you gotta keep in mind what are the languages that you already have in using in staff, so you can also incorporate those in your data collection. The data is also good if you have Spanish and Amharic as one of the high levels in Tagalog, then it's good to, especially for an inside data, not for just census, it's good to find out options to, this is when we need to start talking about hiring process. We need to hire somebody that is bilingual on that, in that type of language, so we can better serve our community. And a lot of the initiatives that I did with this type of data, especially in the hospital setting, as you guys know, every time that you guys have some sort of, I'm sure you've had experience in the past, maybe in the present, where you had a job where you guys are understaffed and you have to put in more time, do what 2 or 3 people are supposed to do because you guys don't have enough people to do it. And sometimes you feel burned out because it's like, oh my God, somebody just quit and now I have to do their job. And I think we all had that experience in the past. If no, we know somebody that went through that experience. Usually as a director of language access at the hospital, my goal was to show, okay, we have some sort of money that we're spending on telephone, video, vendor services, that is money that we cannot really, even though if we budget, we could go over the budget, because it's an essential service that we have to provide. And if we don't provide it, then we kind of like, breaking some laws here and there, or we're not providing the right communication in the hospital setting. If we are giving the information, discharge instructions to a patient in a language that they don't speak, they're not going to follow the instructions. They're not going to do follow-up. They're going to come back in the emergency room, which is more cost for the state, more cost for them, more cost for everybody, to end up in the emergency room rather than following up with a primary care physician or a clinic. So it is important to provide the right information in the language of preference. And also, what I want to say is, make sure that you collect good data and try to avoid any type of challenges as possible. When you guys when my people were understaffed, the on-site interpreters, there is a fee that you pay for the vendors. There is another fee that you pay for the staff that includes benefits. And some of my job was analyzing this data more in depth to say, okay, you know what, we're spending I had a $1 million budget, and I'm like, we're spending $500,000 on vendor services. When if we just hire a couple of people, that would be under $100,000, and they speak those specific languages that we're already spending. And so I was able to cut down the budget by like 30% by just hiring the right personnel to provide the same type of services live on site, which in a way is more efficient because you're actually training the staff that are on site. You're actually having them very competent with the terminology and how everything works in your facility. And unlike somebody that you might get over the phone, you might get somebody that is like very expert, but you can also get somebody that is a newbie, and they might get stuck with a specific word, and they might make some mistakes, because that happens. That happens a lot. So it's if you have your own staff, this is where you have to create this type of data and make sure that you're providing a good service, not just to community, but to your organization as well. So like Abel said, we use the data to try to get more funding. You may use the data to reduce some of your budget cost on language access, and also provide client satisfaction, because if you're providing if you know the languages that you actually are using and you have those languages translated, then everybody's going to be happy with the services. They might be able to use your services, and um, then you might be able to get positive feedback, which is more data. So always think about getting feedback. And the best way to get feedback is by creating surveys, or maybe just having if you have an actual in-person setting, just put in one of those boxes, feedback, yeah, one of those complaint boxes or feedback boxes. And obviously, if the person is complaining, yeah, let me remove this so I'm not blocking the screen. So if you have people that are complaining about the service, then you should, that's important data. Like, why are we complaining about the service? Is it because we did a bad job, or is it because there was some miscommunication that could probably be fixed with having the pamphlet translated, or getting somebody over the phone to help with the actual communication. So data collection is essential, and it's not a one size all approach. So be prepared to adapt your strategies based on the feedback and any emerging trends. Also, be flexible and willing to change your approach based on what you learn from the feedback and data analysis. Be open to new technologies and methodologies that can improve the efficiency and effectiveness of your data collection efforts, and continuously monitor emerging trends and best practices in data collection to ensure that you are using the most up-to-date methods. Like I said, using paper forms to fill out about personal information, it's easy, but if you have a tablet where you actually can translate the information, and like I said, if you're using one of those plugins, make sure you have somebody that speaks the language and reviews that the information is accurate when it gets switched to the other language. And or you can just have the actual form translated by a professional, and make sure that that once they get filled in, then if it's like a tablet, it's kind of more private, personal, or some sort of computer where they can just click. Some companies do send ahead of time the forms to the person, and I understand some people may not have a computer or tablet to do it from home, so that's why maybe some sort of screen provided at the entrance would be beneficial. A lot of people also have telephones, cell phones, and during COVID times, we saw a lot of restaurants cutting down on their menus and providing those QR codes on the table, so you can like take a little picture, scan it, and get the menu. That strategy is not actually bad. I mean, some of us were not a fan of it. Of like, okay, I'm not getting a good signal, but if you have the implementation is a good one. If you have displays, if you have signs that are in English only, may perhaps consider having a QR code on that specific sign or poster that they can just like scan it and they can get it on their phone, translate it in their language. So that's some good suggestion that I could give you for best practices. And like I said, remember machine translations, they are not 100% accurate. There is a lot of issues, especially if the English is not standard, if you're using different type of literacy, jargon, then it's not going to come up as accurate as the original. And also, correct, you can have somebody to review it. A lot of them provide the feature where you can actually manually change the language, the translation into a better translation. And it's a good feature. It's a good band-aid, but that would be a good start to provide something better than that. We talk about data collection, and I would love to collect data. We just talked about QR codes. So I'm going to put this link in the chat box in a few seconds, but if you can also just bring your cell phone and scan this QR code, you will be able to provide us some feedback on today's presentation. And I'll leave it open for any questions while you guys are scanning the QR